Alrighty, so it's noon on the dot here on Wednesday, April 17th, 2024. We'll go ahead and let folks start filing in for our webinar today, the second installment in REAP's 2024 Spring Energy Speaker Series entitled Indigenous Power, Building Alaska's Energy Future. Really excited for the discussion today. Really appreciative of these incredible panelists for joining us to offer their knowledge and expertise and their perspectives on exciting projects in the communities of Angoon and Chignik Bay. Also really appreciative of everyone who's filing into the audience today for spending the time with us. Wanted to begin, as always, with a land acknowledgement. Really compelled to recognize that I myself am zooming in from the unceded lands of the Dena'ina people here in the place that's colloquially known as Anchorage. REAP really draws a lot of inspiration from the Alaskan Native peoples who have, been stewarding these lands for time immemorial, and really recognize their beautiful cultures, innovative practices, and that tireless stewardship as we seek to emulate their model and leadership and truly leading our state's energy transition here. Two awesome examples of communities doing just that on our webinar today. And so as we work to follow their lead and contribute our time and efforts to the challenge of building a just transition for a sustainable future for all Alaskans powered by clean energy, we implore you all to take note of this that awareness and make a habit of and carrying it forward with you. So I'm going to drop in the chat here, if I can pull it up, just again, a helpful link for recognizing whose lands you're on today. And I'm going to encourage folks to introduce yourselves in the chat, where you're zooming in from, whose lands those are, and also your name and affiliation. Would also just say that I'll give a brief overview on the panel itself today before we dive into introductions and the meat of the conversation itself. But we are leaving 10 or 15 minutes for audience Q&A at the end. And so as you develop questions for our panelists here, would really encourage you all to log those in the Q&A function so that we can keep those towards the top of the list here and make sure we answer them before the end. But promise some introductions. I'll dive in myself before handing it off to our esteemed panelists here. I'm Donovan Russinello. I'm the Outreach Director for Renewable Energy Alaska Project. I'm the one that bugs you with all the emails about these events and just tries to get you here to enjoy the knowledge of the folks who have graciously agreed to join us. We're a statewide nonprofit of over 60 dues-paying member organizations and a lot of individual donors and supporters who really support our mission to accelerate the development of renewable energy and energy efficiency across the state of Alaska. So really have a statewide presence across our various programs that really seek to educate Alaskans about where their energy comes from, develop capacity for developing local energy sovereignty, and connecting folks with the resources and opportunities to take their energy futures into their own hands. And then through conversations with our partners, developing policy proposals that could help sort of remove barriers to allowing for that local development here across the state. So that's REAP, that's myself, but really the focus here is our esteemed panelists. So want to hand it off to them to just introduce themselves, where they're calling in from, and their affiliations, and sort of what brings them to the webinar today. So I'll hand it off to Melissa to get us started.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me time on this Indigenous Power panel. We're building Alaska's energy future. Definitely thankful to be here. My name is Melissa Kookesh, and I am the board treasurer for our village corporation, Kootzoo Incorporated. Prior to that, I served as the board chair from 2016 to 2022. I'm Athabascan, Tlingit, and Mexican, and I'm actually calling in from Juneau. I am Raven Dog Salmon from the Central House in Angoon, and I'm the daughter to Lena Woods and the late Floyd Kookesh. My father, at the time of his passing, was serving as the board chair, and it was his wish for me to continue serving in this capacity. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa, and I'll hand it off to Brooke next to introduce herself.
Thank you, Donovan. Hi, everyone. My name is Brooke Leslie, and my Tlingit name is Wushkika. I am calling in from the Stakhin Kwan village of Kachunakauk. Modern day name is Wrangell, Alaska. So also down here in Southeast. And I am both Tlingit and Haida. Following my mother's line, I'm Haida matrilineally. So I am of the Yakjanas clan. Raven, moiety, and doublefin killer whale is one of my primary crests. I am the Rural Economic Development Catalyst for the Sustainable Southeast Partnership, and I'm hosted at Spruce Root. And I am sitting in today for one of our SSP, or Sustainable Southeast Partnership partners, Clay Good, who is with REAP, who is actually on his way to Angoon this morning or afternoon now.
Thanks, Brooke. Yeah, Clay really furthering the partnerships that we hope to build with these communities, and then to help empower them, as we'll talk further about in these conversations. But before then, I want to hand it off to Nathan to introduce himself.
Hi, Donovan. Thank you. And also thank you for the opportunity to share today. And I'm out in Kakanak Village. I born and raised here, and generally been in the Bristol Bay region all of my life. My predecessors and family are from the Lake Clark area, Tenalian Point, Dinaina. And Kakanak is shifted hands a few times over the years, and so it has been both Dinaina and Yupik land, and there's Aleut people, so it's kind of a melting pot. I am the tribal president in Kakanak, but today I am talking about Chignik and Chignik Bay Hydro. I'm the manager for the Lake and Peninsula Borough. The borough does our best to lend our capacity to both munis and tribes throughout the borough. And for Chignik, Chignik's got a tribe and a city, and so we help to advocate for Chignik, and have recently been funded. So I'm here to speak on their behalf, and represent the city and the hydro project. And thank you again for having me. Much appreciated.
Thank you again for joining us. Really excited for the conversation, and I'll hand it off to Jacob now to round us out on the introductions.
Hello, my name is Jacob, and I'm here on Dinaina land in Anchorage, and feel really privileged and excited to be part of the panel. I work at REAP with Donovan. I'm a training coordinator for our People in Power program, and I work with rural utilities around the state to help them get access to training that's individual for their needs and interests. So I've worked with the electric utility in Chignik Bay to help them with some training and other work. And just really excited to be able to help get these folks here together to talk about the projects they've got going, and I'm really excited about the future of energy in rural Alaska.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. I think as we'll figure out here, the best flow might be to begin with our Angoon representatives to speak about all of the work that's gotten the project teams to this point of successful funding from the Department of Energy's Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations. $27 million, an incredible amount, well deserved, and truly sort of delayed, but a really exciting opportunity for the community to take advantage of that. And then I think we'll then hear from the Chignik Bay team here, Nathan and Jacob, offering perspectives on that project, again receiving I think around $7 million for a hydroelectric project in that community. Perhaps have a bit of conversation amongst the panelists after that structured time there, but then please again log any audience questions you may have in the Q&A function so we can make sure and address those to the amazing attendees as well. But as promised, we'll start with the Angoon crowd here, and might just hand it off to Melissa to sort of give a bit of background on the community itself before diving into the project specifics. So Melissa, if you could tell us a bit about the connection that you have. You mentioned your family. Can you just set the scene for us in terms of the community and your connection to Angoon?
Yes, thank you. So my, like I said in the beginning, I am Athabascan, Tlingit, and Mexican. And so my grandfather, it's actually his homeland that we call home. And he had actually met a Mexican woman, and at the time he said he would go back for her, and he met her in Albuquerque, or not in Albuquerque, but in Carrizozo. And he ended up bringing her back to Alaska, and when they were handing out native or non-native names, when they were giving them to people, rather than take a non-native name, my grandfather used the Kookesh, which is the dog salmon preparing to make its bed to lay its eggs, and he just changed it a little bit from Kookesh to Kookesh, so my Mexican grandmother could pronounce it. And so that's how we have the Kookeshes in Southeast Alaska. But I just prior to, and I grew up there, My uncle Albert and my father were brothers, and they married two sisters. My mom went down to babysit and then never left. so, so we've been there for quite some time, and definitely have our family home there and still call it home. But prior to the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act and the Alaska National Interest Lands Conservation Act of 1980, hydropotential was identified in the 1940s by the Army Corps of Engineers, and Kootzoo was established under the terms of the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act of 1971, and Kootzoo is the Alaska Native Village Corporation for the community of Angoon. We have 692 original shareholders, and now we have about 1,100 shareholders through gifting and inheritance. But 20% of our original shareholders still make their home in Angoon. And Angoon is predominantly a Tlingit village with around 320 people. When I was growing up, we had about 600 people, but now we're down to 320 year-round residents. We at Kootzoo are a for-profit corporation with business holdings in real estate, tourism, and soon-to-be government contracting. We own nearly 33,000 acres of ANCSA land entitlements. Our community also owns some of the subsurface rights as well as the surface rights around the community. And this is not typically common under ANCSA. Usually the regional corporations own the subsurface rights, but through the leadership of those who came before us, even with the hydro itself and the potential there under ANILCA, Kootzoo and Angoon agreed to sacrifice the economic benefits of logging in order to allow Admiralty Island to be declared a national monument. And in exchange, Kootzoo was granted the exclusive rights to develop the hydroelectric resources at Thayer Creek. And the challenge we have there is that we're a for-profit corporation. And so for like 40 plus years, we've never qualified for any of the funding that has come out of Congress, out of Washington, DC. We have been awarded, little pots here and there, but never enough to actually build the project and have it in its full capacity. So it's definitely been a lot of time in terms of like trying to find funding, qualify for funding, and also the challenges with being a for-profit corporation, as it was the rights were granted to us and not our tribal government in Angoon, which is the Angoon Community Association.
Thank you for that. And it sort of brings a question to mind too. You mentioned, the residents or the number of residents in the community has certainly shrunk over time. And before we dive into the project specifics themselves, I'm just curious, could you paint a picture perhaps for folks who haven't been to Angoon before, just what it looks like in the community, what the local energy system looks like, and sort of the impacts that has had on the community over time?
Yes, so our community has a our diesel power plant, which provides all of the electricity to the community. And we have been operating on that for quite some time. I believe there's some really crazy numbers here. But in terms of the amount of fuel that we use every year to fund, to keep the power house running, I think we have about 120,000. Hold on one second, let me find that. Sorry, you kind of threw me off with that question. But we have like, I think $645,000 or $645,000 every year that we spend in diesel to provide energy to our community. And sadly, that is a very large number, and it makes it very hard for community members to be able to use power in their homes. I feel like even to this day, living in Juneau and being on the hydro system here, I am always constantly turning off the lights because that was something we did growing up. And so never, leaving the lights on because it was just too expensive to have them on. And then in addition to that, there are plenty of stories where people in the winter time don't have their Christmas lights on outside because of the high cost of energy. And the economic development opportunities around having to rely on diesel and diesel generators is very costly, and we don't have a ton of opportunities currently in the community. We have some fishing lodges, we have opportunities around ecotourism, cultural tourism. Once things start moving in the right direction and the hydro is built, then that will definitely create the opportunity for more economic development opportunities.
Thank you for that. And yeah, I know a big focus of REAP's messaging around the benefit of renewables is keeping those energy dollars in the community as well. That's a lot of money to be sending out on an annual basis. So now to focus on that project that you mentioned will potentially bring a lot of benefits to the community. Could you just give an overview of the project? I know, and perhaps also sort of lay the groundwork for, you mentioned there was, written into the agreements 40 odd years ago, there was sort of the authority to develop a local hydro project, but certainly no funding. So could you just sort of give us a sense for, what the vision is for the project, and sort of lay the groundwork for it? Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So it was 120 gallons of diesel fuel for the generators and 200,000 gallons for heating oil a year. And so this will offer the community, the opportunity for the clean, renewable hydroelectric power, as well as providing 3 times more than the rate that's currently being used in Angoon. And the other challenge is that because people are always just trying to consume the energy and keep their, their electric bill down, definitely not using the amount of energy that we potentially could. And so the opportunity to have excess hydro electricity is definitely out there and will be out there, and trying to figure out how to, find the best way to utilize that, especially around the power cost equalization and other opportunities that are potentially out there.
Awesome. And my understanding is it's a run-of-river hydroelectric project, right? And you mentioned, yes. Designed to provide 3 times the current electrical demand, so that's an abundance of clean, local, sustainably priced energy. Could you give us a sense, just sort of who the project partners are and who might ultimately be the owner and operator of this project?
So Kutsnu is one of the main applicants, our main funders on the application, but we have also been in partnership with the Inside Passage Electrical Cooperative. Prior to me coming on board in 2016, IPEC was not at the table, and we were going over to Angoon to have a community meeting under, I think, the Office of Indian Energy Technical Assistance, and they wanted the school involved, they wanted the tribe as well as the city. But in my mind, it didn't make any sense that we didn't have IPEC at the table. So definitely bringing them into the circle. And, they've built hydros all across Southeast. And in some cases, because I think at the time when I was giving presentations and updates on there, it was like everybody else they were getting these publicly funded hydros, and Angoon didn't qualify for any of that funding. And so definitely very thankful and grateful now that we have the full funding for this project.
Yeah, I might have jumped the gun too on the sort of current iteration of the project team, because I know just from our prior conversations that, obviously decades of work has gone into this. Could you speak at all to just the effort that came before the current iteration of the project team that has successfully applied for this funding?
Yeah, oh my gosh. So it sounds, from my understanding, because I've only been with the corporation since 2016, but at some point, there was basically these plans throughout all of Southeast Alaska to have an intertie, and that would provide, connect all of the communities throughout Southeast. And so Thayer Creek at that time, it was super huge. It was, more than the community needed. It could definitely help supply power, but how you connect to all of these other communities is another challenge in itself, because just trying to get to Thayer Creek ourselves, it's a 6-mile road, and it's just north of Angoon. It's on the western side of the island. But even getting, to that 6-mile road, I think that price tag was about $8.9 million, and that was a few years ago. So with all of, the inflation and the high cost of all of the different projects that are potentially out there, it's definitely a challenge to try to secure all that funding. So it's been a process, but we do have a lot of partners at the table, and we have some, for quite some time. We have Hecla Greens Creek Mine, they're going to be helping with the training of the heavy equipment operators, so that way we can have local hire. We have the Angoon Community Association, which is a federally recognized tribe in Angoon. We have Southeast Sustainable Partnerships. We have Southeast Conference. Southeast Conference with Robert Venables has definitely been advocating on our behalf for quite some time, and a little bird in the congressional delegation's ear on our behalf. Very thankful for that. And I think in all of his Southeast Conference annual meetings, they've definitely included Kutznuwu at the table in terms of giving updates whenever we can. And we also have the Sea Alaska Corporation, who's definitely helped in the process, as well as the Angoon schools and the U.S. Forest Service and HDR for all of their work on the hydro. We had this huge plan design, and then they basically scaled it back down. I think Mark Dalton's in videos from years ago, like 40 plus years ago, when he was a very young man. But you can definitely see him. And I think in that same video, my father was in one of them as well. And so just having those conversations. And then we will definitely need Sea Alaska Heritage for the SHPO part of it. So that should be very interesting. But I hope, and Deerstone Consulting Congressional Delegation, and I cannot forget Senator Stedman too, because he's definitely been trying to advocate on our behalf. So
truly a big team effort, and sort of just to again ground us in, this is basically $27 million in funding for this run-of-river hydroelectric facility and transmission line that's going to have, I think, some big impacts on economic opportunities in the community that I'm hoping to hear a bit more about from Brooke next. But just could you give us a sense for the current project status, sort of what, now that the awarding has officially been, or sorry, the funding has officially been awarded, where is the project at in terms of next steps, and perhaps even just breaking ground and getting started with the construction?
Yeah, so we are in the negotiation phase right now with the $26.9 million. But then the other awesome thing that has happened, because we definitely in this process have been, trying to apply for any piece of funding out there, and everyone would always be like, well, we'll fund, we'll be the last funder. We'll contribute after you get the full funding. And when you keep hearing that over and over, you're like, oh my gosh, it's never going to happen. But then it happened. And so then we have like the BIA Tribal Electrification Program. We have the Denali Commission with the non-federal match. We have Alaska Energy Authority, where we're given $7 million years ago. And of that, 3.6 is for construction. And so we're going to be at that phase soon. And then the Denali Commission for the barge landing construction costs. But right now we're under the negotiations. And then I think for shovel ready will be next year, because we definitely have to go through the SHPO process.
Awesome. Very exciting. And I think, yeah, your emphasis on the partnerships, that is a large team that really, I think, culminated, to your point, decades of work that has gotten to this point of successful award. And so now, like, with partnerships in mind, certainly what brings REAP to this work is who you mentioned at the beginning, Clay Good, the Sustainable Southeast Partnerships Regional Energy Catalyst, who's housed at our organization. Can't join today because, again, he's traveling to Angoon for a career fair there in the community. So really, living the work today. And so really appreciative of Brooke Leslie, his colleague from SSP, the Rural Economic Development Catalyst, joining in his stead to offer a perspective on, the potential benefits that those partnerships, but specifically this project, could bring to the community. So Brooke, could you, build on what Melissa mentioned in terms of the potential economic benefits and how you see partnerships helping to support the maximization of those benefits for the community?
Yeah, most definitely. So in 2022 and 2023, the Sustainable Southeast Partnership worked in 8 tribal and rural communities in Southeast on a project that was funded by USDA Rural Innovation, a Stronger Economy grant. And the project was designed to help catalyze sustainable economic development in the communities through a process that included industry opportunity assessments, community capacity assessments, infrastructure, action plan, workforce and market developments. And then these reports were prepared by our contractor partners and provided data on economic trends in each of these communities that we refer to as RISE communities. And as well as a 2022 business climate survey, which all gave a good sense of how business leaders were feeling about the economic development opportunities in these communities, and what they saw as strengths of each community and the barriers to growth in each community. There are, you can find these reports if it's something that you're interested on our Southeast Sustainable Partnership website, and I'm happy after I'm done speaking to drop those links in the chat. But Angoon was one of those 8 tribal communities, and one of the things that was listed in that RISE report was that the cost of energy was a very significant barrier to growth in Angoon. The SSP, as we call it, has many partners, including REAP, and we have been a part of job and career fairs in the community to help catalyze local economic development, having our workforce development catalyst visit Angoon as well as Clay. And we have a Angoon community catalyst, Carmen Davis, I believe is her name, who is working, even her role works with core partners such as the City of Angoon, Allen Marine, the school district, Angoon Community Association, the Forest Service, Kutznuwu. So there's a lot of partnerships that are happening to help uplift the community in Angoon. And even with these career fairs, there's a summer program called the Alaska Youth Stewards Program, which is now hosted through Tlingit and Haida, Indian Tribes of Alaska. And this is a group of teens from Angoon that have 2 crew leaders, and they go out and work in partnership with the Forest Service during the summer to help clear trails, clean up marine debris, and make Admiralty Island just a more enjoyable and easily accessible place for the people that live there. And so while Angoon has such a lovely community spirit, these economic barriers to growth really required like a partnership approach to helping open up opportunities for Angoon. And so using and resourcing from those RISE reports, and then having Clay partner on this hydroelectric power project really allows now Angoon the opportunity to have more electricity than they know what to do with. And that's a direct quote from Clay Good. It was just too good and I had to use it. And so, yeah, I'm gonna leave it there.
Yeah, and I think that's the perfect hand it back to you. Like, what are the potentials of having that sort of excess renewable energy, locally sustainably priced for a community like Angoon? And I'm sure there's a lot of examples, but if you could just sort of give us a select few to sort of paint the vision for the opportunities that this community could have with that sort of excess electricity.
Sure. There really are endless opportunities. So up until this point, nobody would want to invest in a community that had really economic instability. And this in large part was driven from the high cost of energy. And so this hydropower will now bring around a long-term stability in as far as energy goes. And the opportunities and impacts that we'll have can be seen in both households as well as businesses. So things like appliances, electrical vehicles, heating, cooking, businesses can switch over to clean energy and it would make economic sense for them. So getting a heat pump installed might not have made sense if you're on diesel power, but if you're on hydropower, that might now make sense for you. Angoon has historical ties to an ice making facility, and now that business model might make sense for Angoon once they are on the grid with the hydropower. Ecotourism, potentially an electric ferry dock. I think I heard Melissa throw out as an idea in our planning call. And then one of the upcoming industries that we're looking at here in Southeast Alaska is mariculture. So the opportunities for a kelp processing facility, if that made sense for them, is now an opportunity Angoon could explore being on hydropower, where it would not even be an option to explore on diesel power. And then Angoon has roots in the seafood industry as well. And so the economic benefits of this transition will carry over to all of the diverse ways that Angoon could choose to grow as they move forward.
And I think that's such a great point to end on there, that they can, the opportunities are for them to choose, right? I think that's sort of the motivation behind these career fairs and job fairs that SSP and our colleague Clay are helping to organize, because we just want to provide the resources and empowerment for folks in the community to sort of take advantage of the local sustainably priced abundance of clean energy in their community. And I'm also just struck by, that those partnerships are all meant to help support the community and to bring opportunities to them that they can choose from, and just would be remiss, the whole, I think from conversations with Clay, the inspiration for the career fairs came from, a conversation with someone at Deerstone who was looking for young folks in the community who could help flagging that road that Melissa mentioned that needed to be built out to the project site. And so really a big motivation of hosting a webinar like this and just promoting these awesome projects is bringing folks in who might not know about it or are looking for ways of engaging and sort of helping to bring those sorts of opportunities to the community to choose from, so that we can help them, again, sort of maximize the benefits that will flow to young people, but really anybody who is in the community and who deserves to, benefit from local hiring opportunities and sort of take on those opportunities. So I think we'll come back to sort of a broader conversation, and then certainly a reminder, if folks have questions from these discussions, to please log those in the Q&A function so that we can make sure and address them before we end. But I think that was a perfect note to sort of then introduce or reintroduce our Chignik Bay representatives here, the folks speaking about that project, and perhaps sort of have a similar conversation with Nathan and Jacob. So might start with Nathan, similar sorts of questions just to set the theme. Could you tell us a bit about the connection that you have to not only the region, as you mentioned at the beginning, but the community of Chignik Bay, and sort of give us a brief overview of the community and the efforts leading up to where we are now with the successful award of funding for their local hydroelectric project?
Sure thing, Donovan. Chignik Bay is one of the communities within the Lake and Peninsula Borough, part of the Bristol Bay region. One of the oldest communities in the state, was founded in the 1800s as a fishing hub. I believe Chignik Bay was at one point the biggest community in the state. Primarily Aluktik tribal members settled there, but over the course of the last 100 years, the series of canneries and fisheries have been there for generations, and it's now, probably one of the smaller communities within the borough, and this kind of reflects some of the information that I heard Melissa talking about. It's a common theme among rural communities, and rising cost of energy is one of the issues that we face that forces people out, generally speaking, and makes it unaffordable to live. And so hydro project in Chignik Bay, with the city, the tribe, the borough, ANTHC all being partners, would be a godsend and open up a lot of opportunities. So I could probably expand on some of that. Obviously, there's features about Chignik that we could discuss, but that's in a nutshell. It's a small fishing community right now. The community has suffered over the last several years fishing disasters and some pretty tough runs. I do see, and I want to give a shout out, I see folks from the tribe and the city, also some other friendly faces from the Bristol Bay Native Corporation, and I see the Intertribal Coalition from down there on board here today. So good to see everyone. I was supposed to be in Chignik Bay yesterday. We had a borough meeting planned down there to present some of this information. And as the story goes, in southwest Alaska, we are in a place of tumultuous weather, and we couldn't make it down. So good to see some of the same folks online today, and happy to be here help share the story. So thank you, Donovan.
Yeah, and thank you again for making the time, especially during a busy travel schedule and certainly a lot of demands on your time. And also, just before again we sort of dive into the specifics of the project, could you give us a sense for what the local energy system looks like currently, sort of how the electricity is generated and provided to consumers?
Yeah, I mean, similarly to what Melissa described, and probably a high percentage of rural Alaskan communities right now, it's a diesel power plant with above grade low voltage distribution system. Uh, the hydro story is interesting. There was hydro in Chignik Bay for a long, long time, brought in by the processor, and I want to say it was somewhere in the 90s when the community went diesels on, and the history behind the project is probably one of the most interesting pieces of it. There's a piece of wooden infrastructure up on the side of the mountain called a dam, and the last time it was really overhauled and worked on and built was like 1947. And so there's a wooden dam that's still holding back water. It supplies the community with drinking water and for a long time electricity. There's still wood stave pipe coming down the side of the mountain off of that dam, and the community is relying on that for both drinking water and hopefully real soon electricity. So there's only a limited amount of time here, but it's a great history, and really excited to bring back the potential of hydroelectricity. So thanks again.
I mean, and that's the perfect segue then into the sort of the specifics of the project. And I'm curious, just the overall vision. Could you expand a bit on what you just described? I think there's certainly a drinking water portion of it, sort of perhaps upgrading some of that infrastructure, and then again how you guys sort of came to the decision to capitalize on the energy that's encapsulated in that flow of water as well.
Sure. This I was on the planning commission for the Lake and Penn Borough prior to being the manager, and it was more than a decade ago the conversation was started about. I think it was in 2014. There was a feasibility study done to replace the dam as the ANTHC project for Village Safe Water. This is where the borough got involved in the conversation, and of course the city and the tribe are definitely worthy of mention. It's a team effort, and so the team's really been together now for a decade, recognizing that there was a need for the Village Safe Water, clean, deliverable, potable water to the community. All other options were looked at, but not considered feasible. And so the majority of the cost of putting in a hydro would be getting a road, a good road, and a pipeline down the side of that mountain. And so it only makes sense to consider hydro when you're looking at a safe water project that does half of the work. And so combining the water supply with the hydro just made sense. And so for the last 10 years or so, we've put in at least a dozen applications to different funding agencies. The city in Chignik has been semi-successful in securing some funding to construct a access trail, just to get to the project. I don't know how they built the dam up there 100 years ago, or during that time frame, but I imagine like donkeys and a lot of hardworking people getting the materials up the hill. But long story short, road improvements have been advanced by the community and other efforts, including the transfer of the FERC license. That's can be a heavy lift if you're looking at new hydro. Originally, the fish processor had the FERC license that was transferred over to the city, and it's that so that's been secured. Again, I feel like the team's really been together for at least 10 years on this, and we've been chipping away at different funding resources, and with the OSED award in conjunction with the other money that ANTHC has secured, it looks like we've got enough money to put in both a water and a hydro package that would really make sense for the community. Some details I may have left out, it's the cost of diesel in Chignik is north of $5, and the kilowatt hour cost, which has been subsidized by the fishery over the years, both in the purchase of fuel and usage and purchase of electricity. The kilowatt hour is north of 40 cents. I think it's 42 cents right now. And so, yeah, run of the river hydro project, we would be, with the federal cost share through OSED is 7+ million, 7.27 million. And that's right about the halfway mark for funding when you include the village safe water side of it. But yeah, I imagine there's some detail I'm leaving out, but happy to expand on any of what I just rattled off. And certainly, yeah, again, happy to be here presenting. So
well, and
yeah.
I mean, there are some highlights in terms of specifics that are available on a lot of the helpful links. Shout out to Brian Himmelblum, who's sharing a lot of helpful links in the chat. I could just say, just pulling from even just the OSED announcement, 2.1 megawatt hour hydroelectric facility aims to replace 100% of the diesel consumption, and then provide excess power for hopefully a lot of the opportunities that we can speak to and that are akin to the ones that Brooke mentioned, Angoon, and a high level one is just reducing electricity rates by an estimated 7%. Certainly publicly accessible information, and really just like appreciate your perspective. Like over a decade, it sounds like just to apply for funding for the infrastructure to get out to the site, where then you could successfully apply for funding to construct the project. So just really puts into perspective all of the hard work amongst the project partners to get to this point. Could you give us a sense and let me know, chime in anytime with specifics that I've missed, but could you give us a sense also where we're at now? Sort of similar question to the Angoon project. Now that funding has been awarded, certainly a two-pronged project with the drinking water and hydroelectric facility, sort of where we're at in terms of next steps and when construction may begin.
Yeah, well, we anticipate construction to begin in 2026 and hoping to be completed by 2027. As everyone's pretty aware of right now, the climate for finding engineers and other capacity on projects is pretty tough. There was some question between ANTHC and the borough as to who was going to manage the project, and the money out of the gates, it seemed like the borough might do it because of the timeline. You let a project like this drag on for too long and your costs could get out of hand. Even a couple of years with the annual inflation that we've seen, you'd be looking at millions of dollars more. And so our focus has been to identify the capacity to manage the project efficiently and as soon as possible. And so we've circled back. ANTHC does have an energy team, and it sounds like we anticipate 18 to 24 months for a design period. ANTHC will now be managing the project. We are in the work, in the process of formalizing agreements, and of course keeping in touch with the city and the tribe on details as construction comes down the pipe here, no pun intended. So yeah, we anticipate that there will be some combination of people involved from the community and from outside of the community, probably half a dozen to a dozen full-time employees during the time of construction. And the opportunities outside of employment during the construction of the project are I don't know if they're obvious. Again, Melissa mentioned some of it in what she had said, but there has not been land-based processing of salmon and or other species in Chignik for quite some time. And the potential of generation coming down into the generator, I think, is 385 kilowatts is what it's being designed for right now. That exceeds what the village consumes by quite a large degree. And we're hoping that this might make it attractive for smaller microprocessing or other economic opportunity as we move forward. So right now we're still looking at some field study, geotech survey, engineering to coordinate with the utility, switching gear, etc. So we're, happy to have the funding. There's a lot of work ahead of us, really kind of at the infantile portion of a project when you're talking about engineering, etc. But we do realize that the need for efficiency and to get the job done sooner is going to put us in a better spot as soon as we can start displacing diesel consumption and reducing the reliance on the technology that we all love but hate at the same time is going to be at the forefront. So we're excited to get moving on it, but we do have a chunk of work cut out for us.
Certainly. And I mean, that was an incredible overview. Hit all the points I was hoping to in terms of local employment, not only during the project, but after, some of the economic opportunities that could flow. And also, I think, planted the seeds for bringing in my colleague Jacob now to talk about partnerships and sort of the ways that groups like REAP, but certainly many others, certainly ones that you work for as well, Nathan, are trying to work together to, again, sort of maximize the benefits that will flow to folks in the community and sort of support folks throughout the entire phase of constructing the project, and then certainly optimizing or operating and maintaining as well. So yeah, want to hand it off to Jacob again. People Empower runs our People Empower program as part of our ANI network, really sort of motivated to connect folks with resources and empower folks to maximize those benefits in their communities and sort of see themselves in the inspiring models that Angoon and Chignik Bay present through these projects. So I want to hand it off to Jacob just to sort of touch on that sort of like partnerships that we're hoping to build and ways that we're trying to support communities that specifically Jacob is engaging with.
Yeah, so as Donovan mentioned, I worked with several communities in the borough, including Chignik Lagoon, which is just right around the corner. And I think one of the really exciting things about this project is the collaboration opportunities between communities within the borough. And I think it's great that it's borough-led in that way, because in Chignik Lagoon, as Brian had mentioned, had dropped a comment, and they were able to run 100% diesels off all summer. And that's been something that's been going on several years in their community since they got a hydro installation about 10 years ago or so. And it's really cool to see that same resource coming to Chignik Bay and able to support the community in similar ways to offset the cost of living there. And I think there's going to be kind of cool opportunities to implement some of the things that are going to be learned from the Chignik Bay project in Lagoon. Things like the shared ownership of the resource in the way that the tribe is going to be able to sell power to the city at a certain percentage of the offset cost of diesel to provide some additional access to funding through the PCE program. And I think there's opportunities to implement a similar independent power structure, maybe in Chignik Lagoon or other communities around the state. And it's cool to see AIPP coming to the Lagoon and the Lake and Penn region, because it's been so successful in other parts of the state. And I think one of the things that's most exciting too is because of the training work that I am really lucky to be doing in the region, we're able to be really flexible on what sort of needs we meet. We have funding from the Denali Commission on Arctic Energy that's allowed us to work specifically with communities and meet their specific interests for training. And so with this project arriving in the community, I think it's gonna be really cool to be able to go to Danica and the other staff at the utility and say, hey, with this project coming down the pipeline, what sort of skills or experiences or resources or training do you feel like is going to set you up for success as we look towards implementing this project and your involvement in it? So I feel really lucky to be able to support that in that way. I think, as Nathan has talked about, this is a project that's a long time coming for the community, and there's a lot of really exciting things falling into place. With funding that the tribe and the city has able to get together for upgrades to the grid, and with the recent implementation of a consortium for accessing some DOE grid resilience funding for the whole region between the corporation and the village council. There's expected to be a really significant amount of funding, as much as $1 million or more, for grid improvements that I think are going to be a great support to this project too. So really cool to be able to help make those connections between organizations. And I think, as in Angoon, I would love to see how REAP is able to support some of that local economic development and workforce development in the region. And it's been really fun working with Danica and introducing her to folks that are able to help with some of that economic development in the region, because I think, yeah, there's a lot of potential in Chignik for kind of a new chapter in their city with the resource coming online. So yeah, really exciting to be a part of that and be able to help with those partnerships.
Yeah, and as I mentioned too, REAP is really hoping to host a webinar like this today and ongoing conversations about these exciting projects to share updates with folks, but then also really inspire people who are maybe in communities and project partners who are in a similar position to Angoon and Chignik Bay, so 5 or 10 years before this moment, to draw inspiration, but then also realize that one, there are intricacies to this process that everyone on this panel has spoken about that you sort of need to navigate, and if you can reach out to groups and people like the ones on this panel for guidance on how to navigate that, that's certainly something that we want to make you aware is available to you. And then also just thinking about how partnerships are key to this, and groups like REAP, groups like the Sustainable Southeast Partnership, groups like all of the other partners that we've mentioned, and certainly our funding partners as well, are really motivated to sort of bridge those divides and figure out how as a state we can draw inspiration from these projects and really build Alaska's energy future here. So we've got about 10 minutes left. One final reminder that we've got a Q&A function through the Zoom webinar where folks can log their questions if they have those for the panelists. I haven't seen any yet, but just wanted to throw it back to our panelists as well in case there's anything that you wanted to make sure and highlight that you spoke about before or didn't mention that you wanted to make sure and bring up. And I think, Brooke, you might have something that you wanted to just really sort of reiterate that sort of encapsulates a lot of what we've spoken about today.
Yeah, thank you very much, Donovan. So for those of you that are not familiar with the entity that I work for, Spruce Root is a 501c3 nonprofit, but also a community development financial institution. And we were founded in 2012 with some seed money from Alaska, and we've continued to grow and are now just involved in so many projects throughout the region and networking with people through our Southeast Sustainable Partnership project. And our vision is to amplify the voices of the Indigenous people from our area, the Tlingit and Haida and Tsimshian people, as well as be a driver of regenerative economy. And one of our approaches to the way that we collaborate and partner with people and do work in communities is through what is called a triple bottom line approach. And this approach is looking at people, place, and profit equally. And this hydroelectric power project in Angoon is really a great example of a triple bottom line success story, where it's benefiting the people of Angoon. It's benefiting the planet that we live on in our Earth by being able to transfer over to clean energy, and it's creating economic development opportunities for profitability of especially businesses that are operating in Angoon and want to continue to invest in Angoon and operate. The hope also through the Angoon project is that with the excess power that they expect they'll be able to have, is that they will also be able to help expand economic development to other communities on that same IPAC grid throughout the region. And so as we take that triple bottom line approach to all the work that we do, it was just something I really wanted to highlight in this project. Thank you.
And that's such a great point about regional benefits too. I know, Melissa, you've spoken a lot about even just the community pride for now building this local hydroelectric project and sort of being a part of the broader regional sort of hydro network. And then, you spoke eloquently to it as well, Nathan, the sort of the regional benefits and identifying with the promise that these projects bring. I would encourage you all to hop in. We do have one question here in the Q&A, just as maybe you gather some final thoughts on things you wanted to highlight or make sure folks glean from this webinar. One from Bill Rotecki, I'll sort of paraphrase, basically alluding to the tidal energy potential off the coast of the community of Angoon and certainly within the region as well. I think, you know, at REAP, we speak a lot about tidal as a promising technology that isn't quite commercial yet. And so it's something that's sort of longer term in terms of a resource that we could harness, and certainly a baseload power as well. But I think, you know, it elicits, again, just like the focus on this regional approach and sort of a large resource nearby that could sort of be harnessed, perhaps, you know, by one community, but then integrated into that broader regional grid that you mentioned, the IPEC grid. So any just points about tidal and sort of conversations that might have been had in the community or in the region about that resource and ways of approaching it?
There's definitely been conversations around the tidal, because if you've ever been to Angoon, we definitely have like, we call it up inside, like you're basically going up inside to like Mitchell Bay, Canal Clue area. The water just rushes through there, and it definitely has been a conversation, but with, you know, being granted the rights for the hydro, and having, you know, basically wanting the same challenges that other communities around us have with 100-year-old hydros was definitely a dream. And in 2018 or maybe 2019, because I saw one of my presentations come up in the chat, but I thought it was 2018. But definitely wishing for it, and wishing for, you know, for us to have the challenges around having a 100-year-old hydro, supporting our community with the power, but also the, you know, just knowing that it was our turn, it has to be our turn. And by, you know, having these partnerships, it definitely has created an easier process in terms of moving forward. So wouldn't want to discourage any other communities who might be facing these same challenges. Ours was a 40-year overnight success. So if we can do it, I think others can too.
Yeah, please, Nathan.
Hey, Donovan, I wanted to mention, and this is not tidal energy production, but Iggyagik's got a project that's been in functioning kind of in an experimentation mode, but being more heavily utilized. It's a RivGen system, so they're using the river, the Kwijak River, to produce power. I'm not into the weeds and the details, but I do know that they are, you know, deploying that technology every summer into the river, and they're finding some success with that. I did want to mention, you know, in conjunction with the Chignik Bay project, the Lake and Pinbarrow's got a couple of other hydros. Of course, we've heard about Chignik Lagoon, and another project that we've got that's over in Iliamna it's the Tizimna project. It supplies power to Iliamna, New Haven, and Nundalton, and they're, I think, 98 or 99% renewable, which is awesome. They fire off their generators a couple times a year just to make sure they work. But the other thing I wanted to mention, without taking up too much time, is once, you know, the borough has put in a project or done a study in every single one of the communities that are within the borough. But you really have to look toward the future and plan to manage these facilities once they're put in. You know, otherwise, shame on us. You know, just because you replace your diesel generator with a hydro doesn't mean you can walk away and you know, not grease the bearings and take care of it. And so one of the other projects that I've worked on is recognizing that just about every one of our communities works as an island. You know, we don't share a lot of the services, and so we teamed up with Bristol Bay Native Corporation and did a pilot study, several of our communities, how we could gain efficiencies and work together with linemen, electricians, bookkeeping work, diesel mechanic folks. And so we've done a pilot study, and now we've reached out to all of our tribes, and the 40101D grid resilience dollars are out there. And through the Denali Commission, Bristol Bay Native Corporation, Alaska Peninsula Corporation, several other corporations and tribes, we will be developing and funding a position to address all of the things I just mentioned and try to gain efficiencies, because, you know, repair by replacement days are gone in the state of Alaska. There is no money left to you know, you blow up a generator, it's not going to be easy to find the money to do that. And so we're hoping to, even in places that have hydro, you rely on diesel occasionally for emergencies, etc. But tied in with the program, we will also have an alternative energy specialist. And you know, the future of our utilities is only as good as the care that we give them. And I just kind of wanted to point that out. Deerstone Consulting has been on board through the whole process, and they've been really great. And this opportunity with the 401(d) dollars, federal dollars, gives us an opportunity to dig a little deeper and hopefully, you know, improve ourselves in the, you know, in the 10,000 foot level utility conversation, when you know, from where it's produced to where it's consumed. So yeah, figured I'd mention that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and again, just perhaps, you know, I see that it's 1 p.m. here. If folks want to offer final remarks, I think we should end on those. Truly, like any messages that you might have to folks who are drawing inspiration from your projects, or, you know, or would like to reach out to learn more or to have a conversation, but might feel intimidated by this incredible panelist or panel of speakers today. I will just wrap up with a few remarks. One, Agig, like another great example of a rural and remote community who's truly leading our state's energy transition, and certainly with valuable partnerships with, you know, organizations and businesses like Ocean Renewable Power Company, who's an organizational member of REAP. So, you know, really hoping to just cultivate this statewide network of knowledge and resources to help support communities as they lead the charge on our energy transition, or look for inspirations from communities like Angoon and Chignik Bay to sort of follow in their footsteps for that effort as well. So really, really glad. I mean, there's just so much to share. And I see, Melissa, you raising your hand. I'll just say one thing and hand it off to you all for final statements here. But just, you know, REAP is really grateful for the partnerships that we have and the ways that we can support this sort of work. And really, really grateful for these awesome panelists for joining us today. And to the attendees who stuck around, we had an amazing group of people here and incredible engagement in the chat. So just incredibly grateful. But Melissa, any final words? And sorry, I think you might be muted.
Of course. Nathan just triggered a couple thoughts that in my conversation with Devaney from Deerstone, and that was basically that there's a piece in our agreement or in our plans for repair and replacement with any excess, I think funding, there definitely be a set aside, but also I think there's a steering committee to help with the operations and maintenance that's, you know, been created also. And I think it has to do with like Kootsnu directors as well as IPAC. And I think even Robert Venables with Southeast Conference to help with that. So that, because they're, you know, once it is operational, then there are definitely challenges of, you know, keeping it maintained and operating properly. Every time the lights go out here in Juneau, I'm always like, oh no, are we going on diesel? Because I remember that huge rebate that we got when Palin was in office. All of that went to AEL&P, and I felt what it felt like to actually live in the village in this day and age. But whenever the lights do go out, it's always like that fear of, oh no. So definitely thankful for, you know, the foresight that people have had in terms of keeping the project sort of like insured. So that way there's some sort of cushion in case anything does happen. We are definitely will be on top of it. And with our team Thayer, which we definitely, you know, called it in the very beginning. It was just like bringing all these folks together to try to, you know, solve the impossible. And we did it. So definitely thankful for that.
I think, you know, that one final point that brings to mind for me too, you've mentioned, you know, hoping to have the problems of 100-year hydro in your community, and mentioning a number of other communities who have that problem these days. So that's, you know, experience and sort of gained knowledge that they'll have to share with communities who are, you know, building their hydro projects now, who will sort of look to the future and sort of have a roadmap for how to navigate those sorts of challenges too. So again, just like continuing the conversation about learnings that we can glean from the projects that we have currently, efforts to apply successfully for funding, or line up project partners to execute on a project that we envision for a community, or even just getting a community to the point where they could, start to think about what the future looks like for their energy system is really what we're hoping to do here. And I'm really grateful that you all are helping to make happen here today through this conversation. Any final comments? Otherwise, I think we can wrap up. We are 4 minutes over, and we've still got a robust group of attendees here, so don't want to cut it short. But any final statements from the panelists before we conclude?
2 things. No one misses stumbling around in the dark looking for a flashlight, nor do they miss running out to the outhouse at 20 below zero. So I think that's my final statement.
I think
I would just,
go ahead. I was just going to say my final statement would be from my father, and that was, Melissa, don't ever forget your people. And so definitely leave on that note for myself.
That's beautiful. Ganesh Chish. I think my final note is just reminding people that this is not where the opportunities for collaboration and partnership stop, and that there are still programs available. Once, you'll say, okay, now we have hydropower, but I don't have the money to buy a $3,000 refrigerator and a new range or switch over. And, right now the Department of Energy has a tribal home electrification and appliance rebate program going on for up to $14,000 that people can apply for through May of 2025. And you don't have to wait for these hydro projects to come online to take advantage of those rebate programs. So I just want to throw that reminder out there that there's still these other opportunities that are going to continue to exist. There's the other REAP, the Rural Energy of America program that has the state of Alaska has allocation for, and you can submit for a renewable energy project as well as a renewable or an energy efficiency project. Both are different, and you would need to be a for-profit company or involved in agriculture. And be sure to check out what their definition of agriculture is. If you're interested in mariculture, that does fall into the agriculture definition. So those are just 2 other examples of how you can leverage opportunities that are out there now or going to be there for the near future, and the opportunities that are coming to communities through this project. And then just a note on the question about tidal energy. I've been in a few different energy places and spaces virtually where the conversation of tidal energy has come up. It's of specific interest here in Southeast Alaska. And the answer I was given, so this is not direct knowledge, but was that tidal energy is still very much in the research development phase, especially when it comes to the infrastructure needed to be able to implement tidal energy in communities. And so while that's not something that's being implemented much globally, it's something that is really being researched and should be probably coming down the pipeline in the next, they said the next 5 to 10 years. So again, just passing along that little bit of information that was shared in those spaces with me. Otherwise, I just continue to look forward to the ways that we can help support each other as communities and our region and our state and the people that live here. Thank you. Hawa Ganesh Chish.
Thank you. And I think on that note, passing along helpful information, this recording will be available on our YouTube channel. Please keep an eye and an ear out for resources from REAP and SSP and these other project partners, and just really sort of statewide partnerships on important information for ways of maximizing benefits to you of projects like these, and then also of sort of rebate and funding programs available to you. But also, perhaps you on this webinar are also willing to share your knowledge, and in the interest of sort of creating this network where we're sharing knowledge and allowing for the free flow of information. Reach out if you ever want to join a REAP Energy Speaker Series panel, or engage in some way where you're sort of becoming a more active member of our network. But on that note, we are 8 minutes past the hour. Thank you so much again, everyone. I'll let you go and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, but keep an eye out, and don't be a stranger.